Merry Christmas and welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. I hope that you are having a blessed Christmas season. Everybody, let's talk about pastors and suicides. In November alone, 3 of our nation's most prominent pastors committed suicide. What is going on? Let's talk about it. Should we have compassion or should we engage in condemnation? I want you to reach out to me on Twitter at Santita J. Or go to Facebook, Santita Jackson and Friends, and let's talk about it. We have got a superstar lineup of pastors with us. Bishop Carlton Pearson, Reverend Heyman Cross, Dr. Ken Howard, and attorney Linda Bernard. Let's talk about pastors and suicide on the Santita Jackson Show. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Merry Christmas, everybody. Well, it's not such a Merry Christmas for many people. Suicides are up, and guess what? Pastors are not immune. 3 of the most prominent pastors in America committed suicide in November alone. Indeed, even Master Psalmist, the great anointed pastor, Marvin Sapp, said that after his wife's death, he too was prone. The Clergy Recovery Network says that 64% of pastors, 64%, say that they have no one to whom they can turn in a time of crisis. And did you know that between 1,400 and 1,600 pastors a month are leaving the clergy? It's hemorrhaging. Why? And should we condemn them or should we have compassion for them? Well, I want to go to this wonderful panel. We have got Dr. Ken Howard.
Yes, thank you.
That's right, of the New Breed Church.
New Breed Church, that's
New
correct.
Breed Church, non-denominational. You're bringing everybody in.
Absolutely.
Attorney Linda Bernard, noted civil rights and family rights attorney. Well, you do everything, including entertainment law. Brilliant. Of course, everyone knows Bishop Carlton Pearson, the Gospel of Inclusion. Your new ministries are?
New Dimensions.
New Dimensions, bringing a whole, that he's in Chicago, but of course, you know, he's worldwide. This is Bishop Carlton Pearson. And oh my goodness, Reverend Heyman Cross of the Rosedale Park Baptist Church. Bless you. It's a legendary church here in Detroit. Okay, everybody, I want to open this up. Pastors and suicide. We've got Pastor Isaac Hunter, Pastor Ed Montgomery, Pastor Teddy Parker. Now we hear that Marvin Sapp, Pastor Marvin Sapp, never would have made it. Boy, his song has much more resonance now. When I know, and I'm so glad that he courageously came forward and said, hey, contemplating suicide after the death of his beloved wife, Bishop Pearson.
Well, as a bishop, and we were in fellowship with over 600 churches, we hear this a lot.
You hear it a lot?
Oh, yeah. Self-destruction, which suicide is the ultimate. Many ministers, and I often say, mechanics' cars break down, dentists get cavities, oncologists die of cancer, cardiologists have heart attacks. We sometimes get sick of the same diseases we're treating. Marriages, marital dissatisfaction, insufficient funds, politics of ministry, dealing with trustees, and some of them just rusties. They ain't trusted by me.
He's going to get us in so. You all are going to get us in trouble today.
Well, the pressure of the ministry itself is a kind of psychosis. It's a little bit of mental illness because you're trusting an entity you can't see, and you're trying to get people to believe that you're hearing from this God and hearing instructions as to what to preach, what to reach, what to say, and you feel like God's giving you the message, and then you've got to convince people that you're hearing from God, and sometimes you even doubt. So,
and Pastor Teddy Parker said that sometimes I feel like God is not
there
hearing me, and I'm struggling with my faith. And when I talk to people about this topic, and your ministry is more than 40 years old, the first reaction overwhelmingly is, how could they do that? It's so not just judgmental. We all make judgments. but it's filled with condemnation.
Yes. Self-condemnation.
Well, I think there are several things that contribute to that. Personally, I have had several bouts of suicidal thoughts based on guilt and shame and fear and anger and resentment and all those things. It's really common. But as pastors, we have what I call well-oiled boss buttons. In the world of computer games, kids can play, or people on their jobs, they're playing computer games. And these games are programmed with a button that you push. And even though you're playing a computer game, when your boss comes, it's called a boss button, another screen appears. It's called a boss button. You hit it instantly. Your boss comes by and they think
Everything is okay.
Exactly. And so when I get up to preach, or when I go to church, I get out of that car and I press my boss button. People would probably commit suicide if they knew all the stuff that I was carrying. So I don't want to burden them. I don't want to challenge them. So I do my job. I go to TV shows. Whatever I do, I press my boss button. But I'm still carrying all of this stuff. Sometimes it's wounds for years. Some things are self-inflicted. Mm-hmm. Others, from other people. I mean, we're human. Mm. Jesus was tempted to commit suicide. Satan said, "Jump off the thing." So it's common.
But do you think we really want to see Jesus as someone who was tempted to commit suicide?
He was a man acquainted. He was a human being. That's why the Bible says, Jesus says, "I'm feeling you. Mm-hmm. I've been where you are."
Forgive them. They don't know what they're doing.
Exactly.
Trust me.
Even returning to Jerusalem, knowing he set his face as a flint.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The ultimate suicidal statement is this: Father, into thy hands.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I commit my spirit. I don't know what's out there, but I'm trusting you absolutely. And that seems like an extreme response, but I've done several suicidal funerals, and I don't want the family to feel like that person's going directly to hell. Sometimes it's an extreme act of faith.
Yes.
It is. For somebody to say, God, I can't handle it. I'm screwing my life up. I can't handle this any further. I'm trusting you.
Now, wait a minute. You're taking me. Hold
Ain't
on.
that beautiful?
Yeah,
No. You're taking me off the cliff. You're taking me off the cliff now. Hold on. I want you to respond to all of this because you are the young man in the ministry, the new breed.
New breed.
Like, wait a minute, you're getting away from the
Not
denomination.
new babe, new breed.
Boom, boom, boom. Talk to me.
Well,
are you surprised by this?
No, I'm not. I'm not surprised at all.
It's amazing to me. None of you are surprised.
I concur
preachers.
with Pastor Cross and Reverend Pearson. In fact, what we don't talk about is that many of us as spiritual practitioners, we don't have a support system, a social support system that we can go to.
Trustworthy.
I often say that accountability is essential to change, that we need to be in environments that are cathartic, where we can share our issues, our burdens, our hurts, our rejections, our family issues without being judged.
Well, is your wife enough?
No. No.
I mean, and that is no mark against the
Absolutely.
wife. Because
Absolutely.
I mean, and also I think as men, because overwhelmingly,
Well,
this is
because
a male
oftentimes our
profession.
spouses are affected by it as well.
Children too.
And
And
oftentimes
how?
because there is ministry can be very brutal on a family, which leads to a lot of depression, a lot of mental breakdown
And repression.
and repression
Well, hold on.
as well.
I want everyone to go to Santita J, at Santita J on Twitter, at Santita J. I want to hear from you. Go to Santita Jackson and Friends on Facebook. Let's talk about this. I mean, in fact, I want to hear from you about how brutal
Sure.
ministry is. I mean, because we don't think about these tentacles, right?
Absolutely.
You say it's brutal, it's hard on a family, it's hard on a wife. And then I want to kick this back to all of you.
Sure. I often talk about leading while bleeding. And so much, we spend a lot of time talking about the man's ministry, and we ignore the man. We talk about and we tend to highlight his ecclesiology, but not necessarily, we downplay his psychology and his sociology. We talk about the divinity that he operates from, but we ignore the humanity, that we are vulnerable. We are pastors, we are spiritual practitioners, we have a call, but we are vulnerable as well. My wife, I didn't know I had an affair until the Lord had to share the information with me.
Now, how did that happen?
Well, you may know her. Her name is Ecclesia.
Yeah, ministry.
The church.
He said, you're spending more time with my bride than your own bride.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, I think the children and the family get the backlash of ministry. My children have to share me with the church. I'm what you call a 24-hour ER.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't have time for me. There's a breakdown in the family unit as a result to it. Sometimes my wife has to step in because who she's married to and perform certain duties that she's not equipped to handle or equipped to do. And so there's a number of factors that leads to that. There's an all-out assault against pastors as well as their families.
Well, Bishop Pearson, because
What do you say?
Nelson Mandela, of course, just passed away, and his sister said of him, look, I am clear that he did not belong to us. My mother has said that many times, with my father's vast ministry. She said, look, the piece of him that belongs to me, belongs to me. The piece of him that belongs to us. But be very clear, he's not ours. And so we were not allowed even to call the office on something frivolous. That would bother my father because he would say, whenever you need me, call me. But you're right. You keep going back to this kind of schizophrenic existence that ministers have. So when I hear Pastor Parker say, hey, the report says that I don't think God is hearing me. When I think of Pastor Hunter operating from a place of shame, look, he had an affair. He had some challenges in his life. I'm not trying to write that off, but Bishop Pearson, who? Because you see this, of course, I think legally, but many of your clients, Attorney Bernard, are ministers.
Well, yes, I see it in two ways. One, I'm Catholic, and among Catholics, suicide is a sin, and they do tell you that you go to hell if you kill yourself.
So when you hear
and it's
Bishop
also against
Pearson,
the law.
So when you hear Bishop Pearson
That
saying
you're going to heaven,
no,
right?
Right.
How does that hit you?
Well, excuse me. That's something that makes me not want to do it because I decide I don't want to go to hell. But the on the legal side, right? That's a fact. And when I'm going through hell, I always try to identify with Job.
Sure.
Because I don't know the Bible well because we study catechism, as you know, but there's this thing about all this stuff that Job went through, and then God finally revealed himself to him, and he was rewarded for that. So that's how I feel. I try to say I'm like Job. But directly on the suicide issue, there are a lot of things that can contribute to suicide, and all of you are CEOs of your own church, and therefore you're employees of the church. And as an employee of the church, if in fact you kill yourself, then I'm sure that your family is going to sue as a result of that.
Sue who?
They're going to sue the church. Because
whoa. Are you serious?
Yes, and every church should have directors and officers liability insurance, because if I was the spouse of a minister and he killed himself, I would say it was because of the hostile environment that the trustees had put on him. I would say it was because of the way he was harassed, largely by the trustees, of course, of the church and other people, that they had not provided the support. The same sort of bullying that you get in schools, you can get in a church environment.
So would a wife have a leg to stand on? Because of course we saw Pastor Zachary Timms. It just was revealed that he had a challenge, and that led to his death. And of course there was a fight for the pastorate of his church. His wife lost it, but thankfully she's building a new church. Where does the wife go? All of you have
let me tell you something
families.
else that enters the mind, because I've been here. It's like telling your wife, don't worry about it. When I'm gone, you'll be taken care of.
Yeah.
I've got a great insurance policy.
Right.
So, and again, in my mind, it's like stinking thinking. The best thing I can do is to stop bringing misery and pain, because even though you talk about your dad being shared by everybody, we don't feel good about that. So there's guilt there, there's shame, and you're not providing financially. So the stinking thinking is the best solution is to commit suicide. I've taken care of it, you'll be paid, you'll have money, you don't have to worry. So all of that thinking goes into these suicidal thoughts. And I'm talking about from theory. I'm talking about I have been there.
But
I'm
you may
trying
need
to-
medication too. Medication can help that a great deal because sometimes the brain is not releasing enough serotonin.
Absolutely.
And that's what keeps you low like that. And then you've got to take something to get you leveled off. Sometimes it's just a chemical imbalance.
But wait a minute, but in Bishop Pearson, because in church, we
there's
frown
a-
upon sometimes getting that psychological help.
Yes.
Well, there's a fine line between being anointed and being annoyed.
Please explain that.
Well, anger is a signal emotion. It signals that there is some emotion or commotion or even a devotion in your life that has not been properly dealt with. Preachers are very passionate and emotional, devotional, yes. Meditate, medicate. Most preachers got some Rolaids in there somewhere in this drawer for his stomach before he walks on that platform because people are judging his clothes, his wife's hat or lack of one, his children, his sermon. We spend our lives impersonating who we think people want us to be.
Would you say that again, please?
Most people do it, but particularly we in the ministry. We spend our lives impersonating who we think people want and or expect us to be.
The demands of others.
We say we're giving things to the Lord and we're giving it to our lungs or our liver or our lymph nodes. A lot of death with cancer, a lot of closet alcoholism, a lot of sleeplessness and insomnia, a lot of anxiety. And again, who can I talk? Sometimes the wife is so wounded and hurt and angry at the affair.
Sure.
You know, Paul says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. The point is, let Christ love the church. You love your wives. But sometimes we're so angry at her, and she's angry at us.
Absolutely.
And the board is angry at us, and the members are, and the bishop doesn't like us, and we don't like the bishop, and there's a lot of politics. The root word is policy, or polite, or police. And you get all that mixed up together.
Yeah.
Policy, politic. I like them ticks in there. So we're dealing with all that.
Blood-sucking creatures.
Yeah, blood-sucking creatures. And sometimes the preachers stand before that crowd wondering first, are they going to come? Are they going to respond? Are they going to give toward the vision? Are they going to tithe? So he's angry. They think he's anointed. He's just annoyed, and he's thundering. He carries that energy, that negative energy and that pain home to his wife and children. When you're all day counseling and hearing the worst problems that somebody could ever have, and then suppose your administrative assistant is hurting that day. He or she has problems. Then your top staff pastor is going through marital dissatisfaction, and somebody's about to have a divorce, and kids getting pregnant out of wedlock, and it all falls on you.
Yeah.
You're supposed to, from the pulpit, correct. That's almost like an attorney, because when we come to you, we're saying, get us out of trouble.
Correct.
Keep me out of jail. They saying to us, keeping me out of hell.
Okay.
We all go through the same. Doctors also have there's a high suicide rate. The highest suicide rate is among psychologists or psychiatrists.
Correct.
Second, dentist, because you're looking at somebody's mouth all day. And people don't like dentists.
No.
They're more resentful of dentists than they are a doctor. So professional, service-oriented professions, I should say, are the ones where the highest stress and stretch is, and it causes a lot of substance abuse, sometimes spousal abuse, and a lot of self-abuse.
Well, do you think women ministers have the same issues?
Oh, yeah.
Because men also, women talk to each other. We will unburden with each other. Men, as we view you, you do not do that. That's where, to me, not just the affair with the church, but with another woman or another man,
Absolutely. Sure.
where that will come in,
Of course.
because it's a symptom of a deeper issue, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And it also provides medication. It's like, you talked about, if I find an activity or a habit, I will be vulnerable to that because that helps me medicate so I can regulate. So now I'm more vulnerable to this, whatever, because of the pressures and the challenges in my life. So then it becomes biological, psychological, spiritual. I mean, you got everything in your world contributing to what's going on. It's like if I was to put this chair that I'm sitting on, if I would put that on my shoulders, how long do you think I could carry it?
Not very long.
We're not designed. I'm the strongest man I know.
Okay.
But for me to try to carry this chair, his head ain't that heavy. It gets heavy the longer and so in a sense.
The longer you carry
exactly.
it, the heavier it gets.
There you
Heavier
go.
it
But
gets.
the best thing, sounds a little sick, is that I break down. That's depression. I'm carrying more than I should carry. Jesus says, come apart before you come apart. So sometimes the best thing is for me to crash because I'm carrying more than I'm supposed to carry. I'm not supposed to carry all of this stuff. I don't care whether it's my guilt, my shame, the people's issues, all that's a heck of a lot to carry. So if you give me some energy drinks so that I can carry it longer, I'm just simply prolonging the crash. So then jumping over the cliff becomes the ultimate.
And what we do is we medicate our pain with activity.
Like?
As oxymoronic as it sounds, the more I get involved in ministry, it in a twisted way, it medicates me. It keeps me going because it is a need to be needed. I think oftentimes we confuse what is ministry with what is codependency.
True. Boy, very true.
I agree.
I'm needed. And sometimes what we lack as a child, we crave as an adult. Now, there's a lot of historical contingencies that the pastor have not dealt with. There's some marital issues. There's some upbringing issues. But now I medicate my need to be needed with ministry because everyone needs me. It's expected of me. And particularly someone like myself, who's the eldest of 8. I was always called upon. I was the one, I was the hero. I was the Superman. I had to adjust my cape to everyone to deal with it. And so now we translate that into a ministry environment. Now I'm out winning the world, but I'm losing my own family.
Well, so wait a minute, because it's easier to help others than it is to help and heal yourself.
But you know, mental illness is something.
Because you have quite a story.
I do. And
would you care to share it?
Sure. I would love to. My mother was 14. My dad was 15 when I was born, respectively.
Were they married?
No, they were not married. I was born to unwed parents, right in the heart, in the city, in the ghetto of Detroit. Okay. By the time my mother was 24, she gave birth to 8 children by 6 different men. Talk about looking for love in all the wrong places. By the time she was 22, she began to abuse crack cocaine. She was never in a home. The home was not stable. There was never a paternal figure ever in our home that was consistently there. And so it was very, very difficult growing up because there was no paternal figure for myself. I had to pull myself up from my own bootstraps. I had to take care of siblings. I can vividly remember taking a can of wax beans and sharing it among 7 siblings. Talk about the hardship. So I grew up with this hero syndrome. I'm going to grow up and I'm going to save the world. And sometimes that carry over, what you like as a child, you crave as an adult. It carries over into ministry. It's not ministry. I'm trying to medicate my pain. There are some issues there, some unresolved issues. And because in a church, I don't have a social outlet. In the last 9.5 years, we call it theodicy in theological terms. Theodicy tried to explain the goodness of God amid tragedy. If God is so good, if he's so great, why do bad things happen to good people? Over the last 9.5 years, I lost my mother and 6 of my siblings. As a pastor, since I've been pastoring for 12 years, mind you, I had to bury each and every one of them.
So you had to preach their eulogies.
Their eulogies as well. Talk about the psychological factors. Mental illness and breakdown exists within a church. The church and within ecclesiastical circles, we are ill-equipped to deal with mental issues.
If I may say this here, what really pains me for you as you serve people, for you and for you, and just having seen it with my own father, because he is the walking wounded, but he's carrying a nation and his ministry is worldwide. That having been said, people don't want to understand the pain that you're in. I remember hearing, this is before my grandfather, my father's father, passed. He said, Jesse, if I go first, this was during the '88 campaign, you know, because up to President Obama, my father was the most threatened presidential candidate in history. He said, if you go first, I'll bury you. I'll speak the last words over you. If I go first, I want you to speak the last words over me. And that's a family tradition. But, and when I just don't know how he did it. and how you all do it. And even with that understanding, with the expectation that you would speak the last words over your mother, your father, your siblings, still, people who are of God, who are in the church, condemn you for breaking down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That was when I talked about having this discussion today. People said, well, why would they, I'm committing suicide? I mean, and I hear them, but I said, but do you hear them?
Yeah.
I mean, do you get what this man or what this woman, in increasing numbers, what they're going through? I mean,
Yes, I think
I
think one of the things that will change that if we as pastors become more vulnerable. To me, I've discovered recently that vulnerability is really not a weakness. It creates connection.
but do you think
If-
your
That's
congregants want to hear that?
Not all of them, but just enough of them. I don't need 20 friends. I just need a couple. So if I can connect with a couple people who say, Pastor, I feel you. I'm there. I've been there. I've done it. I mean, most of my suicidal things were because of self-inflicted wounds, stupid, crazy stuff that I've done.
But Pastor, these are human things, and to me, the money, the insurance policy, would not. Every Christmas, and this is our Christmas show. My father, you know, we grew up with security in my home. Every Christmas, I told you at 12, my mother said, Christmas, these presents, all that's over. It's Jesus' birthday. We're done with this. We're going to concentrate on the family. So at the age of 12, everybody, that was it. And my father would come around and say, okay, is there anything special you want? Oh, my mother's going to be so upset when she hears this. It's just, and I said, really, no. You know, the fact that you're alive this Christmas, for me, this is my gift. And he said, you know, I guess if one of the lights went out on our Christmas tree, it wouldn't be the same. And that for me, so for you to have these thoughts and for you to say, as a man, I am going to give you, your money is, you're straight. You know, I want to carry this conversation over, so I want you all to hold on, because I want everyone to go to Twitter, @SantitaJ. I want to hear from you. We need to talk about this because you've got succession issues when a pastor commits suicide. What happens then?
What happens to the key man insurance?
What happens to the key man? What happens? That's why we have Pastor Linda Bernard here, Dr. Ken Howard, Bishop Carlton Pearson, Pastor Heyman Cross. Let us talk about this. Go to Santita Jackson and Friends on Facebook. I want to hear from you. I want to talk about pastors and suicides and how we can move from condemnation to compassion. Because guess what? This is happening to someone you love, someone you
Right
know.
now.
Absolutely.
Right now.
Yeah.
Is considering suicide. That homicide that we see, when that child goes onto that bus or goes into that room knowing that they will not come out, that's suicide. It's more prevalent than we know. Back for more next week.
Thanks for watching this edition of the Santita Jackson Show.